How's everyone doing today? We're okay? So, my name is Rowell, Casimong, for people who don't know me. I am the part-time lay pastor at New Hope Alliance Church in Surrey. So, I'm here today because my dad and Pastor Ben are gone. that's why I'm here. So they're all in the leadership retreat, so let's pray for them as they're out there planning and they have such a good heart for this church and all that they're doing for the church as well. So I just want to continue to pray for them and the leadership team as they're doing such a great job. So is it the last Sunday in January? So it's the last. Who here did New Year's resolutions? No one. That's good. That's good because by the second week, statistics show by the second week, you're not doing your New Year's resolutions anymore. That's just the truth, right? By the second week, your New Year's resolution comes to an end. So that's why I never make New Year's resolutions. However, today, this year, I want to say in my life and ministry, I've committed myself to two things. And as I do this together with my church as well at New Hope, we've committed to two things. And that's deeper life with Jesus. And that's our number one thing, deeper life with Jesus. And number two is missional living. So there's this man. His name's A.B. Simpson. This is him on No Shave November. And he's the founder of the Christian Missionary Alliance, and he created this thing is called the Fourfold Gospel. Does anyone know what the Fourfold Gospel is? A little bit? Okay, so this is the Fourfold Gospel. It looks like this. It looks like that. Anyone seen that before? This is our right. So this is the Fourfold Gospel. I'm doing a history lesson right now. So Jesus Christ is our Savior. We used to have the banner, but Jesus Christ is our Savior. Jesus Christ is our Sanctifier. Jesus Christ our Healer, and Jesus Christ our coming King. So there's a reason why Simpson created this Fourfold Gospel. He didn't just create it because it looks cool, which it does. It looks awesome. But he created it for a reason. He would look around his church and he would see Christians who had a very shallow understanding of who Jesus was. Jesus was kind of like a genie. You make your wish and he grants it. Jesus was kind of like a ticket, right? Once you get this ticket, you're going to heaven. So I'm okay. I don't need to see Jesus anymore. Right? So there was this breaking point in between Jesus and the people. But Jesus was more than just our Savior. He was more than just our ticket to heaven. He was more than just a genie. A.B. Simpson wanted to set this, that Jesus is a real person in your life. And he wants to be part of your life. And he wants you to go deeper with him. He wants to heal you of your hurt and pain from past experiences, from addictions, from illness. And at the end of all that, he's a king who is coming again. And I think today this is lost on most Christians, the idea that we can go deeper with Jesus Christ. And we could go deeper, actually, more than you could think, dream, or imagine. So actually, this is our series that we're doing in the church over there is titled New Year, Same Jesus. And my theme for today, my message for today is actually trusting Jesus in the storm. And I think everyone kind of knows what passage I'm going to read when I say trusting Jesus in the storm, right? I think everyone knows what passage I'm going to be reading, so it's going to be Mark 4, 35 to 41. So let's read this. On that day when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us go across to the other side." Leaving the crowd, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. And other boats were with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. That's a good sleep, on the cushion. And they woke him up, saying to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" And he awoke and rebuked the wind, and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said to them, "Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great fear and said to one another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the seas obey him. So Mark wasn't there when this was happening. Mark is actually his real name, the author, his name is John Mark, and his source is Peter, right? One of the disciples of Jesus. So it's great to have that kind of source. I know sometimes we use different sources. Like on my essays, one time I used a source from Wikipedia. Don't do that. You have to use a legit source. So he's using a legitimate source in Peter. And Mark is one of the 3 synoptic gospels, but he's the shortest, he's the most sweetest, right? Short and sweet. And the thing about Mark too is that this was often given through speech. That's why it's a little bit shorter, and that's why Mark describes things a little bit differently from the other gospels. And including this account of Jesus in the storm is actually in every single gospel. Synoptic gospel, so Matthew, Mark, and Luke. But what's very important when you're studying the book of Mark, there's an emphasis on this. There's an emphasis of Jesus as Messiah, but not as the Messiah that everyone thought. Jesus was just a regular guy. He was just a regular teaching guy, but he would do amazing things out of nowhere, and these disciples would see. So imagine you are a disciple right now, and you are in this boat. I don't know, my dad's showing the boat. It's not very high. So as you see, water would fill in the boat. So it's not very high, and water would come in. And can you imagine just sitting there in this boat as the storm is going on? Right? Has anyone been on a cruise before? I've never been on a cruise, but I'm assuming that it's smooth sailing compared to this. Because you're wide open in the middle of the Sea of Galilee, which actually was more like a lake. So Sea of Galilee kind of looks like this. And we see the mountains. It was surrounded. It's actually a lake. It's not more of a lake. It is a lake. So the Sea of Galilee was surrounded by these mountains. And you can imagine when the storm came, the wind would come in off of the mountains and just wreck the place. So they were rolling around in the water. The water would get really crazy. Does anyone know how to swim here? I know Kevin knows how to swim. Kevin's really good at swimming. But you know what? A lot of us know how to swim, but it's not to say that the disciples all knew how to swim. Right? Well, we know Peter can swim because at the end of the book of John, he swims to Jesus. But all the other ones, Matthew's a tax collector. I don't know why he wouldn't need to know how to swim. So can you imagine you're in this boat, and this boat is waving around, it's dark, it's raining hard, it's super windy, and you don't know how to swim. Imagine that. Right? I've had an experience where I've almost drowned before, and that alone, it was a sunny day and I almost drowned. Can you imagine if it was windy and it was dark and you couldn't see anything? And they're being thrashed around in the water. And the water, often in the Bible, can also be a representation of chaos. If you see in the book of Moses, you know how he parts the sea, he parts the chaos, right? In Psalm 23, Jesus brings you by still water. The Lord brings you by still water, not rushing water, not water that is out of control. He brings you by still water. The chaos is calm. So the disciples were scared. And what is Jesus doing as this is happening? He's taking a nap. He's taking a nap. And I've never been able to take a nap in a situation like that, but I probably could if I was really tired. Me and Esther, we drove to Edmonton a couple years ago for a wedding, and we did overnight. And I'd never done that before. So we drove overnight. I drove about 9 hours, she drove about 2. And so I'm driving. I'm driving about 9 hours. I'm really tired. I'm going through, and every once in a while she would wake up. She's like, "Are you good? Are you okay? You want me to switch?" And even before I could say, "Yeah, I'm okay," she was already asleep. So she was already asleep before I could even. So she's and there came this one point when we're going through the mountains, and it's very dark, and it starts raining very, very hard. There's no lamp posts anywhere, right? So it's completely dark and very windy, and it's raining, and the windshield wipers are a little bit older, so they're kind of just smudging. And there's no way you could be sleeping during this time. But Esther was asleep. She had a good sleep. She was asleep on the seat. And I look at her thinking, wow, that's amazing. She's falling asleep here, but we're going to wake up with the Lord the way this is going, right? So we're driving and I say, wow, how can she sleep through that? And I'm thinking the disciples were thinking the exact same thing. How is Jesus sleeping during this time? And this is interesting because this is how Mark is trying to show that Jesus was still fully God, but he was fully human. He was fully human in that he needed to rest. His body was tired. But guess what? He's fully God. He wakes up, tells the storm to chill. That's how God was. That's how Jesus was fully God, fully human. And in this story, I was thinking about how can we go deeper with Jesus this year? And this word just kept coming up to me, and it was trust. To trust Jesus in the storm. So how can we trust Jesus in the storm this year? Well, number one, we can remember, guess what? Jesus is in the boat with you. You might be sleeping, but he's in the boat with you. But he was in the stern asleep on the cushion. What's the first thing that disciples do when the storm starts hitting? They panic and then they do what? They go find Jesus. How many times in your own life when you're going through a storm do you go and look for Jesus? I know personally I don't. When I'm going through a storm, I'm like, I'm going to do this on my own, right? I'm standing like at the end of the boat, like Titanic, I can do this on my own. I'm self-made, right? That's really big with us. I'm a self-made man. But let me tell you this, your greatest challenge is not your devotion. It's not trying to be the strongest person out there. Your greatest challenge is to understand that in a storm, Jesus is in the boat with you. But that's the world that we kind of live in currently, right? So I've heard this often. I don't know if you guys have heard this. But people say Christians seem happier than other people. I've heard that very often. Like, oh yeah, you're a Christian. I just feel like Christians are a little bit more happier than other people. And I'll tell you, it has nothing to do with the circumstances that we go through in life, because we go through the same difficulties, we go through the same hardships, same loss, same pain, same sorrow. But get this, as a Christian, I live my life with my hands open. I go through life with my hands open, knowing that there is nothing in this world that I can hold on to that's greater than Jesus. There's absolutely nothing in this world that I can hold on to that's greater than Jesus. So I can enjoy life, I can be happy in times, because I know that Jesus is in the boat with me. But like I said, I often don't, sometimes I don't, and this is the audacity that I have. I think I can do things on my own. And I think as Christians, we also think we can do things on our own. Our relationships we can do on our own. Our careers we can do on our own. Our futures we can do on our own. But there's only one, and he's the one who took the place on the cross. Jesus is in the boat with you. And that's not to say we have smooth sailing. We saw the disciples, they went through a storm in their life. But look what the disciples say to Jesus. Do you not care that we are perishing? Have you ever said that to Jesus? Jesus, do you not care what's going on? Have you ever asked God, why am I going through this? Why am I going through such a big loss? God, why am I going through, I'm losing my job, I'm not getting in the program that I wanted to, I'm not living the way I thought I was going to live. God, why are you letting me perish? But you know what? You can't see in a storm. And I think that's the point, right? You can't see in a storm. That's why Jesus said we should walk by what? We should walk by faith, not by sight. You can't see in a storm. That's the point. C.S. Lewis, he has this great quote where he talks about faith. And I probably said this before, but I'll say this all the time because C.S. Lewis is one of my favorite authors. But he has this analogy of faith. I'm paraphrasing this, but faith is like a rope, right? You can look at this rope and say, this is a really good rope. I can hang one of these speakers off of the rope, say that rope is very sturdy. I really trust that rope. I have faith in that rope. Now take that rope, hang it off a cliff, and hang on to it with one hand. How much do you trust that rope? The same goes with our faith. We can look at our faith and say, hey, that's good faith, right? That works. I'm at church. We're good. What happens when something goes wrong and you have to hang off that faith? Do you trust Jesus in the storm? But guess what? Jesus is in the boat with you. So that's my number one. Jesus is in the boat with you. Number two, trust that Jesus has authority. In verse 39, it says this, and he awoke and rebuked the winds and said to the sea, peace, be still. And the wind ceased and there was a great calm. This is so crazy to me because this is creation recognizing its creator's voice. And in chapter 1 of Mark, Jesus casts out a demon from a man. And it's very interesting what Mark's done here, because he records this that Jesus uses the same language to cast out a demon from a man, and he uses the same language as he does to quiet the storm. It's very similar to the way that they're using the language here. And this is to show that Jesus not only has authority over the spiritual, but Jesus has authority over creation as well. He has power over the demons and he has power over the storm, but do allow him to have power over you. Dr. Rob Reimer, he teaches the doctrinal program at our Alliance School in New York. And he says this, the most life change comes from allowing Jesus 100% access to your life. I'll say it again. The most life change comes from allowing Jesus 100% access to your life. And just saying that, that's really tough to say. Right? We had you guys do ETS, there's the house analogy, and you have rooms. And then Jesus, you show Jesus your rooms, but then every once in a while there's a room, you're like, Jesus, don't go in this room. Right? Every once in a while you have a room, Jesus, don't go to the basement, don't worry, there's a mumu there. You just stay away from that. So we tell Jesus, like, don't go in that. Just saying that is tough. Give up authority to Jesus. Give up authority of your life, of your finances, of your future. Give it up to him. Apostle Paul in Philippians 3, Apostle Paul says this, indeed, I count everything as loss for the surpassing worth of knowing Christ Jesus, my Lord. For his sake I have suffered the loss of all things, and I count them as rubbish, in order that I may gain Christ. I count everything else as rubbish. The other word for that you can say is garbage. I count everything else as garbage that I may gain Christ. And Apostle Paul had every right to say this because he was a high official in the Jewish world, and he met Jesus and gave him his authority, let him have authority over his life. And he gained everything from it. And I find that so paradoxical because you can't give everything but gain something. Does that make sense? But Apostle Paul is saying you can give your life, and guess what you gain? You gain Christ. Jesus said, for those who lay down their life and follow me. Let me tell you something about me. I would often go out at night, party, all that other stuff. My life was kind of on this trajectory of I'm not really doing anything. And I would try to escape that by going out, all that stuff, partying. And that's the reason was because my reality sucked. My reality sucked. My day-to-day life was broken. I remember I would go to bed and I would think, if I don't wake up tomorrow, that's okay. Because I had not done anything with my life. Because my life had no purpose. It had no meaning. And one night at 4 a.m., here I am, I'm praying to God. I said, God, I'm so broken. I'm so just useless. But if you want to use me, I'm all in. Let's go. And I can stand here before you guys today, and this is crazy, But I can stand here before you guys to say and say, I found my life when I gave it to Jesus. And although I am a work in progress, I have trusted Jesus with authority in my relationships. I have trusted Jesus with authority in my career and my future. And He has literally taken me farther than my feet could ever wander. My relationships with people, I've given to Jesus. My career, I went back to school 30 years old, but I trusted Jesus with that, as well as my future. So number one, we can trust that Jesus is in the boat with you. Number two, trust that Jesus has authority. And number three, trust that Jesus is greater than your fear. Verse 40 says this, and He said to them, "Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith?" And Jesus is saying this to the disciples because He is making a clear separation between fear and faith. A separation between afraid and faith. These are rational fears that the disciples had. And it makes sense that they would be afraid of what was going on in their life. But Jesus is saying your fear has nothing to do with your faith. Faith is trusting the power of Jesus over your fears. My grandfather, he since went on to be with the Lord, and he was a pastor when my dad was a kid of two different churches, and he was getting paid $1.50 a month. Can you imagine? He was getting paid $1.50 a month. There was times where my dad was in Bible college when I was born, and there was times when they probably wouldn't have food to feed me, and every once in a while my dad would go check the mail and there'd just be random money there. And that's a story that he tells me often. Faith is trusting the power of Jesus over your fears. Has anyone heard this quote before? God won't give you anything you can't handle. Right? Have you heard that before? God won't give you anything you can't handle. And I think it's true in recognition that Jesus is with you. He can't give you anything you can't handle. But let me try to challenge that. I also believe God gives you things you can't handle. I believe God gives you things you cannot handle. And I think that's the point. That this is something I can't handle because I need God to handle it with me. Does that make sense? I cannot lift this on my own. I need God to lift it with me. My fear is so great that I need to trust that Jesus has power over my fear. HJ, can you come and play some piano for me? The very first time I went to America, I was going to take a trip to Seattle. And the Seattle trip was like so... I couldn't wait. You know the first time you go on a road trip and you're like, I'm so excited to go with my friends by myself. I want to go see the gum wall. Have anyone been to the gum wall where there's a bunch of gum and it smells really good and really bad at the same time? Right? I was so excited to go to the gum wall, and because this was my first time, I had a backpack with my pants. I don't know, maybe you need extra pants. I had pants, I had a sweater, I had a rain jacket, I had an umbrella, I had every single thing I needed. We get to the border and I didn't have my passport. And we drive up, and I didn't have my passport. And this is what's interesting, is I had every single thing that I needed to go, but I was missing that one thing that would lead me past. And I think the world is the same way. We're in this mode where we're trying to get everything. We want money, we want relationships, we want all of this, but you're missing Jesus that will make you go where you need to go. We're missing that one piece. let me tell this last story as I close. I was going through a rough period, and I've probably told this story before too, but I was going through a rough period in my life, and I remember praying to God, God, I don't trust you in this storm. I'm going to do this on my own. Jesus, I'm just gonna do this on my own. So I go to sleep that night, and I have a dream, and I have this huge bag, and in this bag I'm putting all of my problems, all of my hurt, all of my pain, all of this. I'm putting all of this stuff that I cannot handle on my own. I'm putting them all in here. And I see Jesus, and Jesus is walking in front of me, and Jesus is holding a cross, and he stops, and he says, give me your bag. I said, Jesus, he said, give me your bag. So he walks over, he grabs the bag, he's holding the bag in one hand, he's holding the cross in the other hand, and he walks, and he walks, and it goes, he gets crucified, and while he's crucified, he's holding my bag. Do you trust Jesus in this storm? Maybe some of you guys tonight here are going through your own storm. Let me tell you, none of it is meaningless. It's all in the glory of Him at the end. Can I say that? Everything that you're going through will equate, as long as you stay on the path of righteousness, it will equate to glory for Him in the end. And I just wanted to close with that. That Jesus is with you in the boat. Jesus has authority. And lastly, Jesus is greater than your fears.